This episode of Inside Golf Podcast is brought to you by Inside Sports Network. It has been a pretty wild run. I was very bullish on the team, obviously, that we brought in around us, but I cannot say that I expected this to start the season. So first we had Rishi come through with a 90-1 on Madison Keys at the Australian Open. Our tennis Discord is robust. We're kind of all in on tennis now at ISN, which was not something that I had really initially expected, but I can't say I'm surprised being friends with Rishi now for a while and getting to know him a little bit better and having him being one of the kind of the founding fathers of the company and a huge part of what we're trying to do now at ISN. But we'll talk more with Rishi about that on the podcast on Monday when we recap some of the Australian Open and dive into some edges that he may have found in the tennis betting market and tennis DFS, which I think is something we're going to start taking a lot more seriously at ISN in the future after the success of the Australian Open. And then we had HE, man. HE has been always a Torrey guy for us. We love HE at Torrey. He's been our guy at Torrey for years, dating back to the 2019 US Open, or excuse me, is a 2021 US Open. I've been thinking 2019 US Open because that was the Pebble Beach Gary Woodland US Open that we're going to reference a couple times on this podcast. But HE at Torrey we've been talking about this one for years now. And we just kind of needed that 1 week where you get the 5% HE, the 5% Sam Stevens solo second, the 1% Lanto, the low-owned Korsung Jay, and we just now have everyone in the Discord flying the flag and taking down GPPs. We had a member finish first and win 25K, and just phenomenal to see that ISN flag all over the leaderboards. Not to mention two of our own, Ryan Baroff, first of all, who I do the Monday DraftKings show with every week, has now hit 3 in a row. Nick Taylor, 125-1, Sepp Straka, 70-1, Harris English, 100-1. I do not think I've ever seen that before in terms of hitting 3 winners in a row north of 70-1. Hitting any winner north of 70-1 once or twice a year is a pretty big accomplishment and not easy to do. I do not think I've ever seen somebody do it 3 weeks in a row. Our guy, Twitterless Steve, who we did the Torrey Pines Sunday show with, last week, and he did a great Pebble Beach breakdown that just went up on the channel that I hope everybody checks out. I've not gotten a chance to watch that yet, but very curious to back check what Steve had to say this week about Pebble after I finish talking about Pebble in the second half of this podcast as well. But Steve was on HE as well. Steve had the 100-1 on Harris English. Our guy Kellogg had 100-1 on Harris English, and honestly, way too many others to count. So, this is the place to be if you want the best information, the best player pools, the best cores, the best betting cards, the most fun, like the genuinely most fun place to sweat. And really that feeling of it's like a family. And when any of us win, all of us win. And it just so happens that this was one of those weeks where everything kind of came up green for us based on the players that we were talking about and excited about heading into the tournament. So just in terms of, the product and the quality of the information, and it's quality above all, right? That's what I've always been saying. You cannot fake understanding golf courses if you don't understand the golf courses then it really shows and has an impact on the way that you are going to talk about these players in your content and the decisions that you are going to make. So, Inside Sports Network, we would love to have you as part of that growing community and family, InsideSportsNetwork.com. If you are a student or a younger guy as well, and you're super interested in the data piece, we are very big on, the student discount thing as well. So, uh, I'm always willing to work with people on price. Just shoot me a DM. We want it to be affordable. It should be affordable. We think what we provide is very affordable for the price, but we really do not want anyone that really cares about it to be able to miss out on being a part of this community as well. So, um, I think when you factor in all you're getting, particularly with the other sports, it works out to like $10 per golf tournament, if that. And I certainly do not think that you'll be disappointed. So InsideSportsNetwork.com, we always say the results are the results, and the results speak for themselves. We record everything. And if your tout or whatever isn't recording everything, then you should it's probably worth asking why that is. Okay. Apologies for the background. I'm in a hotel room right now in San Francisco. I've made a quick trip up north from Los Angeles. My girlfriend just passed her board exam to be a veterinarian, so we're celebrating that with two of our closest friends this weekend. Truly in awe of how much more important the work she's doing than me, and I deeply cannot relate to it, but it is an honor and a pleasure to get to cheer her on. So shout out to her for passing that board exam and getting to be able to be there and celebrate it with her. And then my closest friend, Billy, as well, is about to move to New York. Um, he took an awesome new job to join our other great friend, Jack, in New York at his company. And so Billy and I are playing golf together tomorrow at a super, super great golf course, which I'm very fired up for. Golf travel and traveling to play great golf courses is a massive part of my life. It kind of fills me up, and this is remarkably my first round of golf since launching ISN on January 1st. I have been just so hyper focused and locked into the company day in and day out, and I think we are finally at a point where we're at a bit of a cruising altitude. We kind of got to and have blown through all of the early numbers that I was hoping for. So, I kind of realized you should probably find some time to get back to playing great golf courses again, because that makes you who you are, and that fills you up. So checking one off tomorrow that I've been excited to see for a really long time. I'm going to miss the early football game. And I lean Eagles -6 in that one, by the way, but I will not get to watch any of that. I have a huge future on the Eagles to win the NFC, but you know what? Thank God the golf is over, because every Sunday I get really stressed out because we've been having really good Sundays. And as soon as the golf tournament ends, I'm like, okay, all of these people that are winning, I get very anal about making sure that I personally congratulate them and acknowledge every single one of them, whether, it's a $2 ticket or whatever, a $25,000 ticket. And I'm so glad that we got all through all that today and the golf ended today. So I can just leave my phone in the bag tomorrow and really sink my teeth into a golf course that has some architectural features that I'm pretty excited to see, and have heard some fairly glowing reviews about. And so I'll write about that in the newsletter on Wednesday. It's another part of the company that I love, is that now with our newsletter, I have a place to write creatively about golf course architecture and travel, as well as many other things. Me and a buddy of mine are working on our top 10 movies of the year, which I think is going to be a very fun newsletter bit in the upcoming weeks. I have one or two more to see before we go live with that, but they just announced the Oscar nominations the other day, and I'm a big movie guy as well, and one of our one of our friends of the company slash board members, is a huge movie guy as well. So we are going to break down some of the best movies that we saw this year in an upcoming newsletter too. And like I said, Josh Siegel does a phenomenal job with that aspect of the company, which, by the way, is completely free to subscribe. So that hits your inboxes every single Wednesday morning for free. So anyway, I'm recording this late on Saturday evening after a big dinner, but we'll be out of commission all morning tomorrow. And travel or not, I wanted to give some thoughts on Pebble because it's a big tournament. It's one of the signature events. We hit Wyndham Clark here 90-1 last year. I have some opinions about Pebble Beach. I don't think I feel as strongly opposed to the architecture of Pebble Beach that the way that I felt about Torrey Pines. But I do think that the modern version of Pebble Beach and how it is presented to a 2025 professional golfer is interesting, right? And I think in a lot of ways, which I'll talk about in a lot more detail in the upcoming minutes, it has been reduced in many ways to what I believe is not necessarily the most interesting version of golf. And I think weather played a massive role in this tournament last year. And I think weather's going to, for better or worse, going to play a role in this tournament this year as well. But let's kind of start with the big picture. So this is now a signature event. For the second year, it's a field of 79 players. And last year was the first year of being a signature event, and it didn't really get to realize its potential because the final round was canceled due to an atmospheric river in Northern California. I remember actually being in Northern California for this tournament last year and being at the Sacramento airport on a flight home to LA and finding out on Saturday night that my Wyndham Clark ticket actually did in fact hit, and they were not going to play golf the following, Monday, I believe it was, at Pebble Beach. 2025 this year, I'll talk about the weather shortly. I do believe that we will have 4 rounds of golf this year, but not without weather concerns for us to dive into. Now, under this new format, the amateurs are gone over the weekend, which I think is a massive win for golf fans in general, because you remember prior to last year, this was a pro-am event with a cut where the players rotated their first 3 rounds between Pebble Beach, Spyglass Hill, Monterey Peninsula Country Club. And while I really liked Monterey Peninsula Country Club, that golf course is gone from the rotation now. And so under the new format, players rotate their Thursday and Friday rounds at Pebble Beach and Spyglass Hill, a golf course I don't love, before playing both of their weekend rounds at Pebble Beach. So this tournament is not going to feature a cut. You're just going to get 1 round in there at Pebble Beach. And there will be no amateur play over the weekend either. So, again, this is undeniably a change for the positive, in my opinion. We're finally going to get to say goodbye to the bloated Saturday coverage of Bill Murray and Larry Fitzgerald, and obviously coverage in general of PGA Tour golf and pace of play is at the forefront of my mind. It's at the forefront of a lot of fans' minds. And again, that is a whole other conversation topic for another day. But I think ultimately the fact that there's not going to be amateur play over the weekend at Pebble Beach, and we get to see, maybe a few celebrity shots on Thursday and Friday, but, more golf shots from the best players in the world over the weekend at Pebble Beach. And while I have some qualms with the current presentation of Pebble Beach and how this golf course plays versus how it could play as it pertains to modern professional golfers, at the end of the day, this is one of the PGA Tour's biggest assets. Okay. This is the second most recognizable golf course on planet Earth outside of Augusta National. And to be honest with you, I don't even think it's particularly close. I think that Pebble Beach is a bigger asset to the PGA Tour than TPC Sawgrass. I think it's a more recognizable and bigger asset to the PGA Tour than any of the current US Open venues. Okay, right? Outside of Augusta National, this is the most known, recognizable, and in terms of like the ability of getting a golf course to bring people to television sets. I mean, this was one of the highest rated tournaments on the PGA Tour prior to it being a signature event, right? So prior to you having Rory McIlroy and Scottie Scheffler show up here every year, this was one of the PGA Tour's most bankable tournaments. And, of course, they did everything in their ability to neuter it. They put it in a bad spot in the schedule. It started attracting less of a solid field over the years. I think the amateur play sapped a lot of the competitive aspect of the tournament, right? The identity of the tournament became, okay, this is where we go to watch Bill Murray hit shots every year. When I think the best version of this for the PGA Tour is not a silly tournament with amateurs. It is getting the best players to play competitively on a golf course that, may not be the US Open, and it's certainly not going to play as difficult as a US Open. I don't even think Pebble Beach should be in the rotation as a US Open golf course anymore, unless they get a shorter traveling golf ball. But, this should be the event of the year for the PGA Tour. Okay. This should be the event that they're prioritizing, not having 6-hour rounds, and that they're prioritizing getting like a great television window when there's no football on. This is the week in between the conference championships and the Super Bowl. So there's no NFL on, there's no college football on, NBA isn't really in full gear yet. Like this, the biggest event in sports should be this weekend, the best players in the world taking on the most recognizable golf course in the world, which is Pebble Beach. Okay. So I have pretty high hopes. We kind of got robbed as fans last year of a really fun golf tournament because of all of the weather delays that we had. And what actually ended up happening, if you remember at Pebble last year, was that, they really just took golfers off the golf course for what would be the difficult conditions. And Pebble actually played really, really easy last year because, they ended up playing it in pockets when it was not super windy, but it was really receptive, right? Because they had gotten a lot of rain. So the times that golfers were eventually on the golf course in that Saturday round, it was just a complete dart throwing contest, right? And Wyndham Clark essentially won, not because he is an elite driver of the golf ball by any means. Pebble Beach actually does not test driving skill at all. It is like one of the lowest correlated tests of both distance and accuracy on the entire PGA Tour. If you've ever played Pebble Beach, which I've been fortunate enough to play a couple times, like it is, you pick, particularly for PGA Tour pros, like you're hitting driver at Pebble Beach if you're an amateur, if you're somebody like me. But if you're a PGA Tour golfer at this version of Pebble Beach, unless you get crazy weather, 8 of the par fours measure between 370 and 450 yards. So for most of the par fours at Pebble Beach, until you get a shorter traveling golf ball, these are really wide fairways with a low miss fairway penalty. You're really just bunting it out there to whatever wedge distance you want. And you're getting a large plurality of short iron approaches. And then it just comes down to, can you score on the par fives, right? Can you take advantage of the par fives? And you have 3 of the 4 par fours that measure over 180 yards. So that's how it kind of reveals itself as a wedges and long irons golf course, right? And I think similar to last week at Torrey Pines, we'll focus the majority of our attention on Pebble Beach for modeling purposes, because you're going to have 75% of the action this week at Pebble Beach. And, both Pebble and Spyglass have a lot of similarities. I do not think they're necessarily maybe as similar as Torrey Pines North and Torrey Pines South. but they're both par 72s with 4 par 5s, less than 100 yards in difference of total length between the two. Both feature pretty generous landing areas and are really second shot golf courses with small, kind of tricky poa annua greens. I would say the largest difference between Pebble Beach and Spyglass is that Pebble is a true less than driver golf course that really strongly devalues driving in general. And I think that Spyglass Hill is far more of a driver heavy golf course where distance is a lot more helpful. Okay. And I think that one round at Spyglass certainly advantaged Ludwig and Wyndham last year is, neither's driving skill is remotely accentuated at Pebble Beach. If you look at Ludwig and Wyndham's stats at Pebble Beach last year, particularly Wyndham, it was just crazy wedge play and putting. So, for the most part this week, my model is going to mainly reflect Pebble Beach with kind of an added bump to maybe driving distance, which I think is a very useful tool at Spyglass. I think Spyglass is very distance biased and Pebble Beach is not distance biased at all, nor is it driving accuracy bias really. Like it has Pebble Beach probably has as many like what I would call a forced layup. Forced layups are really tricky to identify on the PGA Tour now because as strategy is getting more optimized and like even just like talking with Carson Young about this stuff where I'm just like, dude, hit driver everywhere. Like players now learning to hit driver as much as possible. And I still think Pebble Beach is one of those golf courses where it's just there's not a lot of benefit for it. There are a couple holes that just really bottleneck. Like if you think about how 1 really bottlenecks, how 3 really bottlenecks, how 15 and 16 really bottlenecks. Like Pebble gets as close to a forced layup golf course as it kind of gets. But the fairways themselves are wide and there's a low miss fairway penalty. So it kind of explains this dramatic long-term correlation at Pebble Beach between approach play and success. And, that approach play sacrifices the value of distance or accuracy off the tee. I think at Pebble Beach, at the end of the day, wedge play and putting from 5 to 15 feet is the name of the game, which is really interesting because this is not a golf course that is great for Rory McIlroy in terms I think Rory's like an interesting play this week. Um, but it's not a golf course that is going to advantage Rory McIlroy or Tony Finau or Scottie Scheffler. I mean, it does advantage Scottie Scheffler because Scottie Scheffler is also the best wedge player in the world. But in terms of like neutering driving skill, all of the best drivers in the world, this is one of the main golf courses on the PGA Tour where they're not going to be rewarded for that skill. It doesn't mean it doesn't help. Like if of course it helps anywhere. And in fact, there are a couple of holes where if you are long and straight, even at Pebble, it helps. But comparatively speaking to Torrey Pines, where the name of the game was just wind up and swing for the fences. And if you're long and straight, and if you're at least long, that's a massive, massive advantage. Pebble is not like that at all. Pebble is really like short positional. Okay. We talked about how Wiley a couple weeks ago was more of a driver heavy golf course masquerading as a short and positional golf course. Pebble, in my opinion, is way more of a short positional golf course than Wiley. Like if you look at Pebble's driver usage over the last 5 years is 44%. That's crazy low. That's like the lowest on the PGA Tour. No one hits driver at Pebble. PGA Tour average is 67% and rising. I would imagine PGA Tour average by the end of this year is like driver usage percentage above 70%, and Pebble doesn't even really hit 50. Okay. Um, so yeah, it's all wedge play and putting, and it's that same super challenging POA greens that we saw last week at Torrey. And since it is far less of a driving test, the importance of navigating the Poa greens is even more important than it is at Torrey or Riviera. And in the absence of wind, here's where it gets interesting. Pebble is kind of a joke without wind today. Like, if you get benign conditions and receptive conditions, now Pebble, this area of Northern California has not gotten a lot of rain by any means, but Pebble Beach loves to present as green. The golf course is not Pebble rarely ever plays firm and fast unless you get a US Open, and they water the hell out of this golf course always. Okay. So last year, when you got added rain on top of that, and it was super receptive, it just turned into an extreme dart throwing contest. And it was just like who could make the most putts inside 15 feet. And that all came up Wyndham Clark. But I think this week at Pebble Beach, we're going to get more difficult conditions. I think it's going to be demonstrably more challenging than we saw last year. I don't think the greens are going to be as soft, at least, till Friday. We're going to start to get some rain. Some rain's going to start to come in on Friday. And last year it played a full stroke and a half easier than it typically plays. Spyglass actually played nearly 2 strokes easier than it usually plays. I would expect this year a return to 2022 conditions, at least, where that year where we hit Tom Hoagie. I've actually hit winners at Pebble 2 out of the last 3 years. Tom Hoagie at Pebble started me and Brian's friendship. That was the first bet that he ever tailed me on. So I love it. And, I've played this golf course a bunch of times. I know it really well. I feel like I understand it really well. But the thing that you're going to have to keep in mind with Pebble and we've nailed this last year with Wyndham Clark being this is all wedge play and putting from 5 to 15 feet. And Pebble is very much based on the weather conditions. Okay. If it is calm and soft and receptive, this is just pin your ears behind your back. Who's the best putter inside 15 feet? I actually really like Denny McCarthy this week. I'm never a Denny guy, and I don't know if I've ever bet him, but I really like Denny McCarthy this week. He played really well at Pebble too. Okay. This year, though, however, I think it's going to play pretty spicy over the weekend. And I think that's the only thing that is holding me back from saying that this is going to be a pin your ears back wedge fest putting contest. I am looking at the weather in Pebble Lone Pine right now. And Friday and Saturday, it's fine. I would expect kind of normal conditions. Then you get into Friday afternoon. It starts getting a little spicy. And I would say right now, and this is one of the main reasons why you want to be a part of the Discord, is for these weather updates. Okay. But I'm telling you, as it looks right now, Friday afternoon particularly looks a lot worse than Thursday. So I would really want to identify the guys who are playing Pebble on Thursday and Spyglass on Friday, because you actually don't want Pebble Beach in worse conditions, because Pebble Beach has far more coastal holes. Spyglass has 3 out of the first 5 holes are on the water. And then mainly it's kind of a parkland inland tree line golf course that doesn't have much interaction with the coastline outside of the first couple holes. Pebble is a lot more exposed to the wind and has a lot more interaction with the coastline. And so if Friday is much worse weather than Thursday, I would almost fully stack the guys now this could change a lot. Now that's why it's so important to be in the Discord. But I would almost fully stack guys that are playing Pebble Thursday and Spyglass Friday. And then you get into Saturday and you're looking at 30-mile-per-hour winds. Okay. And then you get into Sunday and it's pretty windy in the morning, and then Sunday afternoon, and it's like 39 mile per hour gusts, 32 mile per hour sustained winds at 1 p.m. on Sunday. So I'm going to update my model as the week progresses. But unfortunately, like I don't like being one of those guys because I wish I could go on here and tell you that weather doesn't matter, but it just does. It's it's a big part of it for me. It's not my entire brand, but it's a big part of the conversation for me every single week. And I just think this is a week where if you nail the weather, you're going to have a big edge. I don't know if it's going to be, you're going to have the best information at your disposal to nail the weather in terms of you can make all of the right decisions based on the forecast and you're still going to get it wrong some of the time. But we're certainly going to give you all of that information to the best of our abilities at ISN. And I think it unfortunately is a week where you're going to have to pay attention to the weather in some way, shape, or form, whether it is affecting your golf course breakdown or a wave. It's a signature event, so there's not tee time advantage, but there's a certain course that you want to be in, and that came into play last week at Torrey Pines, right, where you really wanted to play the North course on Wednesday and the South course on Saturday, because how the North course plays, that's a whole other podcast I'm not going to get into, but that rare wind that actually made the North course play just as hard as the South course on Thursday, they never get that wind because they were talking about on the broadcast how the North course is more exposed to that's not true at all. And actually, I've been walking Torrey Pines for 5 years. I know that piece of property like the back of my hands. Like when it's windy at Torrey Pines, you want to be on the North course. Okay. And the reason why why they took them off the golf course still was because of the coastal holes on the South course and the ball's blowing off the greens. That particular wind direction somehow just made a stretch of holes on the North course play so incredibly hard with that specific wind. Anyway, podcast for another day. The main point with Pebble is, and I'll talk about the model here in a second, but under easy conditions at Pebble Beach, this is all wedges and putting. Okay. Now, under more difficult conditions at Pebble Beach, you're going to want to look at how this golf tournament has played under harder conditions, right? You're going to want to look at the let's see, what was the harder year? 2020, Nick Taylor, Pebble played over par. Spyglass almost played a stroke over par. So right now I'm kind of straddling the fence between, I think that it's still going to be a lot of wedges and putting are going to be important, but I'm considering as the week progresses, kind of rejigging my model away from this heavy emphasis on wedge play and putting towards a more balanced tee to green skill set of a higher increase importance of a little more off the tee stuff, a higher increase importance of a little bit more short game stuff and long iron play. Because I think with the weather that we're seeing right now, the way that the times that they were on the golf course last year, it was just all, super receptive, dart throwing, Wyndham Clark putting inside 15 feet. And I think it's going to be a lot windier than that this year. I mean, it's going to be cold. Temperatures in the low 50s, high 40s. So I'll break down my model, and my model is kind of, again, straddling that fence of definitely harder than last year. But if this weather continues to hold, I'm going to update. And again, we'll talk about this Discord, but I'm going to update my model again and change some things to make it even more biased towards the golfers that I would want in 50-degree weather and 30 mile per hour wind gusts. So let's take a quick break. And then I will run through my model and actually a bet that I kind of panic made on this Saturday afternoon. Okay, we are back. So, top 20 in the model. Number one, Scottie Scheffler. Let's talk about it for a second. Scottie Scheffler's playing this week. This is his debut of the 2025 season. The last time that we saw Scottie Scheffler was in December, but when he was winning the Hero World Challenge, gaining strokes in all four major categories, putting phenomenally well. He gained like 4 strokes putting at the Hero. He debuted the claw grip, and it was looking like full steam ahead. Okay, if Scottie Scheffler has even improved his putting further, then the sky is the limit. Then around Christmas time, he has an accident in the kitchen, cooking up some ravioli, and we have not seen Scottie yet this year at the Century. We thought we were going to maybe see him at the American Express. It actually looked like the cooking accident was a little bit more serious than we would have expected. And he actually required a minor surgery on his hand. The reports have been that up until recently, he really hadn't been swinging. He'd been watching. He'd kind of been like watching his wins over the course of the 2024 season to remind himself what it felt like to hit the shots. Okay, so I think you could look at this two ways. He's plus 320 in the betting market. DK already put out some odds. And I don't know what he's going to be on DraftKings, but if you correlate his betting price to his DraftKings price, he's going to be around 12.5. He's going to be the highest priced player on the slate by a lot. Now, I think you can look at this two ways and say, this is the most uncertainty that we will have surrounding Scottie Scheffler for the rest of the year, right? We're going to find out how he looks, and he's either going to look exactly like Scottie Scheffler, or he's going to look not quite like Scottie Scheffler, right? And maybe he's not great this week, okay? I think you're probably, from an ownership standpoint, whenever there's uncertainty in the market, this is probably the lowest owned, barring disaster later in the year. But this is probably, yeah, this is probably the lowest owned that you're going to get Scottie Scheffler going forward, I would say. Because if he looks great this week or wins this week, then whatever the ownership number is this week, and I have no idea, it still could be above 25%. I doubt it. I think there's enough uncertainty with Scheffler that people are going to say, hey, I'm going to take a wait and see approach, particularly combined with the fact that this isn't even really one of Scheffler's golf courses. I mean, he finished fifth here last year, but by Scottie Scheffler standards, if Scottie hasn't won 2 or 3 times now, this is not considered a TPC Sawgrass or an Augusta National or a Bay Hill or even a Phoenix, where it's like, or a Muirfield Village, where it's like Scottie has all of these golf courses where it's a surprise if he doesn't win. And Pebble is not one of those. Pebble, I think you could argue, there are things about Pebble Beach that don't accentuate what Scheffler is best at, right? Scheffler is a great driver of the ball. He's very straight and he's plenty long. Pebble Beach neutralizes that a little bit, although he's actually been the best player in the world off the tee on club down courses. He's been the best player in the world overall on shorter positional golf courses. Like, he gains strokes off the tee more easily than any player in the world on golf courses like Pebble Beach. Oh, by the way, he's the best wedge player in the world as well. So I'm not even going to sit here and tell you there's not a great Scheffler golf course. I think Pebble Beach is plenty of great Scheffler golf course. I don't think he's ever won in California, and I don't think his POA splits. He's putted well on POA in the past. He did not putt well at Pebble Beach last year. But I think there will be enough uncertainty surrounding Scottie Scheffler that you may be able to get either a major discount on Scottie or Rory or both. Okay. And I will say this, I haven't made a decision, but I'm probably going to take my chance on one of those two guys. Okay. I think I'm probably leaning towards Rory now. Um, you can poke a lot of holes in the Rory case at Pebble Beach too. I think that Pebble Beach is a way better golf course for Scheffler than it is for Rory, in the sense that Scheffler's a way better wedge player than Rory. The putting for Rory, I think, is probably still, I feel a little bit more confidence in Rory's putting, but Rory's had a lot of struggles on POA in the past. He finished like almost dead last at this golf course last year. Rory finished 66 at this event last year. He putted terribly. Okay. And if you're thinking about like the kind of the opposite of, there's some important long irons that are going to be helpful from Rory in terms of the par fives, but a golf course that has a low driver usage percentage and a lot of wedges, it's like the opposite that you want for Rory McIlroy, right? And I don't think anyone thinks about Pebble Beach. He played well in the US Open in 2019, but I don't think anyone thinks of Pebble as a Rory golf course. So I think you have two guys at the top of the odds board that are going to create some uncertainty, and your guys like Kobe and Rishi are going to be very interested, including myself. And we kind of had those this week last week where I, felt like I was getting back to my roots, where I just took a lot more chances and I played more aggressively and I wasn't afraid of shit. I kind of got in my head when I had like a big chalk Corey Connors missed the cut on me and a big chalk Sung Jae missed the cut on me. Last week I was like, fuck all this shit. Like, I'm all in on Sung Jae and low on Sung Jae. And Shane Lowry didn't even work out for me, and that was still fine. With the amount of low on plays at the bottom of the slate that came through. But I think what you're going to see in DraftKings is a tremendous amount of ownership on Justin Thomas and Colin Morikawa. Maybe really JT. And that's why I ended up betting Justin Thomas. I took the 17-1 on DraftKings, knowing that it might end up being a big fade for me on DraftKings, because I think a lot of the ownership at the top is Scheffler and Rory. They'll still get their own. Rory's playing amazing, by the way, right? And I think that's maybe just why, just in a vacuum, even though it's a better golf course for Scheffler, I still think I have a little bit more confidence in Rory to play better at Pebble next week than I do Scheffler. Rory's playing great. Like, Rory's finally been putting great. This is the first stretch of golf tournaments over the fall where his putting really rebounded after Pinehurst. Like, he's finally putting well again. He putted really poorly after Pinehurst for a couple of weeks. And, he just finished third in Dubai. I know he just always finishes top 5 in Dubai, so it's like, whatever. But I think Rory's playing great. And I don't know if I can say that Scheffler's playing great when he's not practicing and watching videos of himself from 2024, because he almost forgot what it feels like to hit the golf shots under pressure again. But I think that the security that you're getting with Justin Thomas on a golf course that I think is a great golf course for JT under either condition, right? The main thing that I want to see with JT, and the reason that I didn't bet him at the Amex, the reason that I didn't bet him at the Century, was I need to see the putter start to get going. And the putter for Justin Thomas has been good enough. He gained strokes putting at the Century. He gained strokes putting at the American Express again. He gained strokes in all 4 categories at the American Express. And again, I don't think this is going to be the pure putting contest that we saw last year with Wyndham Clark. I think you get Justin Thomas. He gained 3 strokes putting at the American Express. Gain 3 strokes putting, JT, and keep that iron play where it has been. JT, one of the best wedge players in the world. Like, you have so many short par 4s and you have so many holes where, you're going to have to be awesome from 125 yards and in. Add in the fact that you might get some more spicy weather. I'm thinking about those rounds at TPC Sawgrass in the past where, JT is super creative in the wind and he's hitting all of these shots with lower ball flights. Like, I'm just seeing that this week. It's just all coming up JT for me. And I think now after talking about him on the preview show, it's, with Ludwig, like even last week, like Ludwig opened at 12-1 on DraftKings, and just like all the Ludwig buzz and steam and stuff. And I knew it was Zalatoris too, and Zalatoris opened 28-1 on DraftKings, and then he dropped down to 22-17 on JT at DraftKings is a good number. Okay. Maybe there's going to be another buck that's going to open on Monday morning with an 18-20. That's going to get bet down immediately. I'm telling you right now that Justin Thomas is going to settle in the 15 zone. At least. I really do believe that. And I'm not right all the time. I could be wrong about this, but I'm thinking to myself right now, the combination of what I'm saying, all of the Discord love that it's going to get, and I think a lot of other handicappers or whatever content people are going to look at this thing and say, okay, there's uncertainty around Scheffler. There's uncertainty around Rory. Ludwig left a terrible taste in your mouth last week, and he may still be battling an illness. Hideki Matsuyama, we just watched him free fall out of the top 20 and shoot 80. The other piece that I think is right there on par with JT in terms of course fit and their ability to win this tournament is Colin Morikawa. And that's kind of it for me this week is like, I think this is a Morikawa JT duel. And I said to myself to the Discord, I'm going to bet the guy that has the better number between Morikawa and JT. And I think a lot of people are going to look at this tournament. They're going to take, the concept of wedges and approach play and take what I'm saying about driving is devalued here and look at this and say to themselves, this is JT. This is Morikawa. Like Pebble Beach has always been a second shot golf course. It's always been a second shot golf course dating back to Tiger. Like this has always been a golf course that elite approach players have won at. And who do we think of two of the best approach players in the world? Justin Thomas and Colin Morikawa. And now with Justin Thomas's putting improving, okay, Justin Thomas is one of the best short games in the world. If you want to say, okay, we're getting more difficult conditions, short game's going to matter a little bit more. We're going to have a lower greens and regulation percentage. It's all Justin Thomas. Okay. And so I think Justin Thomas is going to be highly owned in DraftKings, and I think he's going to get bet. And I think it's just going to be like Zalatoris last week, opening at 28-1 on DraftKings and settling down at 22-1. I just think the JT number is going to get bet. And I could be wrong. I could be wrong. But my question is, who else is getting bet? Because I had a lot of the odds opened after Torrey finished, and I was kind of on my way to dinner. So I didn't really get the full conversation in the Discord. But it really seemed to me like people were centering around, there was a lot of unsuredness around Scheffler and Rory and Ludwig too. Ludwig left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. I would maybe go back to Ludwig. We'll have to see. I haven't dug into the Torrey numbers and stuff, but that was pretty ugly over the weekend. And I think a lot of people are going to say to themselves, this is a JT week or a Cantlay week. And now, you know me with Patrick Cantlay, you never have to twist my arm on Cantlay. I love myself some Cantlay. I do not think that Cantlay is in the approach form to win this golf tournament the way that JT and Morikawa are. And I just think when there's uncertain weather like there is this week, I just trust Morikawa's really improved in crap weather, by the way, like dating back to that super windy round at the Masters where Morikawa just looked awesome. I like Cantlay this week. I still may bet Cantlay this week at 22-1 or whatever. I still may play Cantlay this week in DraftKings. In a vacuum, I absolutely prefer Morikawa and JT. And I think a lot of folks are going to look at it that way. And I don't know if I can fit whatever the best Morikawa number is. Like I haven't even done the math yet on if I just go to town with a JT and Morikawa betting card, although I'm probably going to end up with JT maybe super heavy on Morikawa in DraftKings and then take some chances down the board. I do think, and particularly we've been getting a lot of 100-to-1 winners. I do think that these signature events, even with Scheffler, are still kind of open right now. I think with some of the uncertainty around Scheffler, where I think if there's enough of a chance where you don't think you're going to get Scheffler at 100%, that, some of these guys at 100-to-1, the top of the board just they haven't been winning golf tournaments, right? They haven't. Hideki, I guess, was top of the board at the Century, but a lot of these guys like Justin Thomas and Colin Morikawa just haven't been winning. Okay. And so I think you're still in a position this week where you can say to yourself, okay, I'm going to pick my horse, whether it's JT, Morikawa, Cantlay, or 2 out of Ludwig, or 2 out of the 3, or you center in on one of those guys. I think for me, I bet JT 17. I have the ability to cash that out on DraftKings if something else crazy happens and I really change my mind. And to be honest with you, I really think there might be a course stacking advantage. Now, whenever there's a course stacking advantage, I just make the bets because the numbers on the guys that I'm going to bet always move. So I just make the bets and then I try and get the best numbers and take my chances on weather. And then how I play DraftKings is largely based on the weather. So I bet the JT 17. And I think I may wait until we get the tee times and a clear weather report. But just to run through the rest of the model, Scottie 1, Hideki 2, great Hideki golf course. I think people may start to say, hey, is this Hideki thing over? We'll see. I'm definitely not out of the Hideki running myself, or in terms of, at least I don't think he's getting another win again this soon, but I think Pebble is a good golf course for Hideki, to be honest with you. 3, Tom Hoge, who I love at Pebble Beach. Okay. Tom Hoge at 65-to-1 in 2022 was one of my I think it was one of the tweets that helped me gain a following, was hitting Tom Hoge at Pebble Beach in 2022. And I think this is always going to be a good golf course for Tom Hoge. Look, and here's why Eric Cole is 6th in the model. This is and this plays into JT. JT in many ways is just a way better version of Tom Hoge, because one of the biggest concerns about JT is he's still not an accurate, great driver of the ball. This is the week, and my model is setting up for this, which is why JT, Eric Cole, and Tom Hoge set up so well. This is the week. Pebble Beach is the golf course to play guys that are bad drivers of the ball, in my opinion. It is the week to play guys that can get away with murder off the tee because they're awesome approach players and putters. And that is Pebble in a nutshell. Why do you think Tom Hoge has won here so much? Why do you think Jordan Spieth has won here so much and Daniel Berger has won here so much? It's all just short layups off the tee and wedges and putting. And all these Pebble Beach winners over the years, your Spieths, your Tom Hoagies, Daniel Berger was a lot like this as well. Even Patrick Cantlay, in a way, when Patrick was at his best, Patrick's way more of an elite wedge player and a putter than he is a great driver of the ball, particularly Spieth. Spieth's the biggest example of this at Pebble. Same with Phil too, by the way. Pebble is the one golf course where it's okay, Phil, let's take driver out of your hands and let's just see you be that crafty wedge player when you're at your best. But I think that's why Eric Cole and Tom Hoge and Justin Thomas rate out so well for me, because I devalue driving here. I just played this golf course and walked it too many times to think that you need to be a great driver of the ball to do well here. You don't. You need to be a great short iron player and a great putter. Now, when you get shitty weather, that changes things a little bit, where I'm more inclined to emphasize off the tee a little bit. That makes a lot of the tee shots a lot harder. So kind of check back later in the week as I navigate that with my model. But in this current iteration, when I'm still saying the golf course is going to be playable and not insanely like monsoon 40-mile-per-hour gust hards, and you're still going to be able to hit a bunch of shorter clubs off the tee and have wedges into a lot of those short par fours. We get 4 JT, 5 Ludwig, 6 Eric Cole, 7 Adam Scott. I love Adam Scott here. 8 Rory, 9 Patrick Cantlay, 10 Denny McCarthy. Denny McCarthy 100 to 1 is a good number. I want to wait on weather, but I like Denny a lot this week. He played really well at Pebble. 11 Victor Hovland, which who knows? He may just be completely broken. He's 55 to 1 on DraftKings, and I didn't even consider it. The numbers from the DP World Tour event in Dubai, I don't know. He's won an amateur here at Pebble. I remember I bet Victor last year at Pebble, and it was a really bad pick. It didn't matter because I also had Wyndham, but great golf course for him. He's won a USAM here. No idea what's going on with Hovland. Talk about that more on the Monday show. Then it goes Wyndham Clark, our guy at Pebble. Mark Hubbard finished top 5 Pebble last year. Great golf course for Mark Hubbard. Maverick McNeely, Sam Burns, Tommy Fleetwood, Colin Morikawa, Taylor Pendrith, Tony Finau, Keith Mitchell. Okay. So, like I said, I bet JT at 17 to 1. I expect him to be very popular this, not just because I'm saying it. I think a lot of people are going to come to a similar conclusion on Justin Thomas, which is okay, he's finally ready to win a PGA Tour event. The putter's starting to look good. He played very well at Pebble Beach last year. I mean, he hit the ball unbelievably at Pebble last year, finished 6th. Finally get the putting approach golf course. He's played well on the West Coast in the past. If not now, then when? It's kind of time for JT. And then after that, either I bet Morikawa or Cantlay, or for me, it is Denny, Hoagie, Adam Scott. Let's get a little weird. So that will do it for me. I will be back on the ISN YouTube with Ryan Baroff going for 4 in a row on Monday, breaking down the DraftKings slate. As always, we would love to have you at ISN. It's a real family. It's a lot of fun in there. And seriously, I think if you're looking for a week to check it out, this is a really good week to do it. We've always crushed this. I've always been really think about last year. Some of the best weeks I had were some of these signature events. And I know Pebble Beach really well. I feel like I have a really good handle on it. And I feel like I'm very well just being here and having a lot of friends in the area, being able to talk to a lot of caddies. And so I almost went. I'm 45 minutes from Pebble right now. I almost stayed and went to the practice rounds and stayed for the tournament. I got to get home. I have too much stuff I need to be on my computer for, but maybe I'll even shoot up on Wednesday. We'll see. I don't think I can make that promise. We have too much content and stuff to do to be at the golf course all day, and I've my own opinions on the value of some of that stuff to begin with. So again, that will do it for me. Enjoy the football tomorrow. I like the Bills, and the Bills are going to get it done. Shout out Josh Allen. I'm a big Josh Allen fan. We play golf at the same golf course in Rochester, and I think the Bills are a better team. So I think the Bills get it done, and I think the Eagles do as well. But I'll be out of commission for a lot of it, and see you back on this podcast feed on Monday. Cheers.